Hello everyone! Today we're excited to introduce our Discourse concept map, designed to help us better understand and explore the core elements of the topic. Our map is organized into three main sections. First, we have the definition from different fields and why it is important to know what is discourse. Next, we dive into the steps, identifying the different variations or forms of the core concept that are essential to our understanding. And lastly, categories. Understanding these categories help us see how different ideas relate to one another and how they fit into the bigger picture. So I begin. I'm Clyde Carcueva and I will discuss the definitions.
Definition of discourse refers to any form of written or spoken communication, including the expression of thoughts through language. And we already knew from the discussion that it is a group of statements that shape and structure language for communication. But let's go to the other definition of discourse in other fields. In linguistics, discourse refers to the analysis of how specific language features contribute to the interpretation of text in various contexts. In philosophy, discourse are ways of talking, thinking, and acting that together construct social reality. In sociology, refers to the ways of constituting knowledge together with the social practices, form of subjectivity, and relation of power that inhere in such knowledge. And last, in political science, discourse is a complex set of strategies for producing, disseminating, and interpreting power relation to language. In short, discourse refers to a verbal interchange of ideas. So now, why do we need to learn what is discourse? Studying discourse in linguistics is important for understanding how language functions beyond individual sentences, focusing on coherence, context, and meaning. It examines how social and cultural factors shape communication and has practical applications in fields like education, translation, and AI. Discourse analysis also help reveal how language influences power, ideology, and social structures in media and politics.
Good day, everyone. Today we're going to explore an essential aspect of communication, the argumentative discourse. Whether in academic writing, debates, or everyday discussions, argumentation helps us express ideas logically and persuasively. So, what is argumentative discourse? Refers to a structured form of communication where individuals present their viewpoints, support them with evidence, and respond to opposing arguments. Unlike casual conversations, this type of discourse requires logical reasoning, critical thinking, and persuasive techniques to convince an audience. It is commonly used in debates, legal discussions, research papers, and even in political speeches. The goal is not just to express an opinion, but to justify it with solid reasoning and facts. Here are the four key features of argumentative discourse. Number one, the logical reasoning. The arguments must follow a clear and rational structure. Number two, use of evidence. The claims should be backed by credible sources like facts, statistics, and expert opinions. Number three, counter arguments and refutation. A strong argument anticipates opposing views and responds effectively. Number four, persuasive language. The way we present ideas impacts how convincing they are. Here's the three examples of argumentative discourse in real life. Number one is the academic writing. Research papers and argumentative essays require students to take a stance on a topic, support it with evidence, and address counter arguments. For example, an essay on climate change might argue that human activities contribute to global warming using scientific data as evidence. Number two, political debates. Politicians use argumentative discourse during debates and speeches. They present policies, defend their positions, and challenge opponents. For instance, in a presidential debate, candidates argue about economic policies, using statistics and expert opinions to persuade voters. Number 3. Courtroom arguments. Lawyers use argumentative discourse in court. A defense attorney might argue that their client is innocent, presenting evidence and countering the prosecution's claims with logical reasoning. In summary, argumentative discourse plays a crucial role in shaping opinions, influencing decisions, and fostering critical thinking. Whether in academia, politics, or everyday discussions, mastering this skill helps us communicate effectively and defend our viewpoints persuasively.
Hello everyone, I am Israel Deb F. Rodolin. So I will discuss today about my part of the narrative discourse. Narrative discourse refers to the way we use language to tell stories, share experiences, and convey events. It's a fundamental aspect of human communication, allowing us to connect with others, share our perspectives, and make sense of the world. Key features of narrative discourse. So I have here 6 examples of the key features. First is the story structure. Narratives typically have a beginning, middle, and end, with a clear sequence of events. Next is plot. The sequence of events that make up the story, including conflicts, turning points, and resolutions. Next is the characters. The people, animals, or the entities that participate in the story, each with their own motivations, goals, and personalities. Settings. The time and place in which the story occurs, which can influence the event and characters. Next is point of view. The perspectives from which the story is told, which can be first person, third person limited, or third person omniscient. Lastly, narrative voice. The tone, style, and language used to tell the story, which can convey the narrator's personality, attitudes, and emotions. So I have here 4 types of narrative discourse. First is personal narratives. Stories about one's own experiences, such as autobiographies, diaries, or oral histories. Next is fictional narratives. Stories that are imagined or invented, such as novels, short stories, or fairy tales. Next is historical narratives. Stories about past events, people, or cultures, such as histories, biographies, or documentaries. And lastly, myths and legends. Stories that are passed down through generations, often explaining natural phenomena, cultural practices, or supernatural events. So I have here 4 functions of narrative discourse. First is entertainment. Narratives can engage, amuse, and entertain audiences. Next is education. Narratives can teach moral lessons, convey cultural values, and share historical knowledge. Next is social bonding. Narratives can create shared experiences, foster empathy, and strengthen social relationships. And lastly, personal identity. Narratives can help individuals make sense of their own experiences, values, and goals. Linguistic features of narrative discourse. Also, I have here 4 examples of linguistic features of narrative discourse. First is verb tenses. Narratives often use past tenses such as the simple past, past perfect, or past continuous. Next is temporal markers. Words and phrases like then, next, meanwhile, and afterward help to sequence events. Next is causal markers. Words and phrases like because, since, and as a result help to explain causal relationships. And lastly, evaluative language. Narratives often use evaluative language such as adjectives, adverbs, and emotive vocabulary to convey attitudes and emotions. I hope this helps you understand narrative discourse better. So that's all for my part. Thank you.
The next type of discourse is the descriptive discourse. Descriptive discourse is a type of discourse that prioritizes on creating a vivid and detailed sensory of a person, place, object, or events. Basically, it involves on describing something in relation to the senses. Its primary goal is to create an engaging experience for the reader or listener in order for them to understand and imagine the person or places in the words written or in spoken rather than just telling a story. It emphasizes the use of strong adjectives or verbs to engage the reader's five senses, which is the sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. This focuses in sensory details allows the reader to fully experience the described subject, whether it's a person, place, object, or events. Figurative language, such as similes and metaphors, is often employed or used to enhance the imagery and to create a more impactful descriptions. Unlike narrative or narration discourse, which is more about telling a story on a plot and characters, descriptive writing stands alone in its creation on enhancing descriptions. This type is frequently used in novels, poetry, and also in travel writing, or also known as travelogue, since it's all about being in different places and experiences. So in order for the readers to understand a specific place, then it is important to describe it. And also for personal essays. So written or spoken descriptive discourse requires careful word choice and also for the details.
What is exposition? So, exposition is a type of discourse that aims to inform the readers. Scientific reports, compare and contrast essays, how-to guides, and explanations of academic concepts are examples of this type of discourse. So, exposition has a two different meaning: exposition as rhetorical mode and exposition in narrative. Exposition as rhetorical mode is different from exposition in narrative. Rhetorical mode are the different patterns or structures for organizing writing. These structures are related to the general purpose of your essay, such as persuade, describe, or narrate. Exposition is a rhetorical mode whose purpose is to explain or inform. This rhetorical mode contains many diverse forms of writing, from recipes to album reviews to political explainers. Exposition provides explanation and inform about the world. On the other hand, exposition in a narrative would be the information provided at the beginning of a fairy tale. For example, a retelling of the story Cinderella would have this exposition at the beginning. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a girl named Cinderella, who was the stepdaughter and servant of an evil stepmother. This exposition introduced the characters, which is Cinderella and her stepmother, the setting, which is a faraway kingdom, and provides the background information, which is Cinderella is a servant to her stepmother. In narratives, exposition is the background information needed to explain the plot and the characters of the story. There are three parts to an exposition in a narrative, which are the setting, characters, and background. Meanwhile, exposition as a rhetorical mode is a different type of writing. For example, a recipe or an album review would be an example of exposition as a rhetorical mode. While both explain information, there is a difference you should recognize between the meaning of exposition. Know that exposition in narrative refers to a story's background information, while exposition as a rhetorical mode refers to non-fiction writing that explains or informs everyone. So the importance of exposition is that exposition is one of the most common and at some point, everyone needs information explained to them. You are reading a piece of exposition on exposition right now. The world is a complicated place, and exposition as a rhetorical mode can help people make sense of it. Exposition can also assist people when they need to know how to perform new activities or tasks. For example, when you are a new driver, you read about proper driving procedures such as merging into traffic. So lastly, exposition serves as an essential purpose to helping people learn and use further information.
And now we are down to the persuasive discourse. It is a type of discourse that aims to convince an audience or a reader to agree with a particular viewpoint or take a specific action. Which methods uses logic, evidence, emotional appeals, and rhetorical techniques to achieve its goals. It is driven by several techniques such as anecdotes for personal stories that connect with the audience emotionally, repetition, a repeating of key phrases or ideas to emphasize their importance, rhetorical questions, a questions posed to the audience to provoke their thought or agreement, and figurative language such as metaphors, similes, and other figures of speech to make the argument more vivid and memorable. An example of persuasive discourse piece are political speeches, legal arguments, academic essays, our everyday conversations, and advertisements, incorporating both the methods and the techniques of writing a persuasive discourse. Understanding how persuasive discourse works can help us become a more effective communicator, whether we're trying to win an argument, sell a product, or simply express our opinion.
One of the three categories of discourse is transactional discourse. Transactional discourse defined as communication aimed at achieving a specific goal or completing an exchange, focuses on practical outcomes like making requests, giving instructions, or negotiating. According to the perspective of John Searle 1969, transactional discourse often involves speech acts like requests or commands that help accomplish a particular goal. For example, when someone asks, "Can I have a coffee?" they are performing the act of requesting. Harvey Sachs 1970 adds that transactional discourse follows a structured pattern. In a conversation, each speaker's turn is aimed at achieving a practical result. For example, if you're ordering food, the customer will request, the waiter will confirm, and the transaction is completed when the order is served. Emeki Holiday 1978 views transactional discourse as goal-oriented. He suggests that language is used strategically to fulfill specific needs like making a purchase or giving directions. For example, take ordering food at a restaurant. The initiating part might be when a customer says, "I'll have a burger, please." The clarifying part could be when the waiter asks, "Would you like fries with that?" The responding part is the customer saying, "Yes, please." And finally, the transaction closes when the food is delivered.
Hello everyone. So the next category of discourse is the poetic discourse. And according to Oxford in 2001, poetic discourse is a literary communication in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings, thoughts, ideas, or description of places or events by the use of distinctive diction, rhythm, style, and imagination. So when we say literary, it is concerned with or connected with the writing, study, or appreciation of literature. And for those who don't know, literature is a collection of written work, but is also used more narrowly for writings, specifically considered to be an art form, especially novels, plays, and poems. In other words, poetic discourse comprises creative fictional writing. It includes novels, poems, and drama. These types of work often prioritize emotion, imagery, theme, and character development, as well as the use of literary devices like metaphor and symbolism. One example of the poetic discourse is a poem written by William Wordsworth, who is one of the most renowned and influential Romantic poets. And his poem is entitled A Character. I marvel how nature could ever find space for so many strange contrasts in one human face. There is thought and no thought, and there is paleness and bloom, and bustle and sluggishness, pleasure and gloom. These lines on the poem showed how William Wordsworth explores his moral character and many ways one can be in the world. William Wordsworth reflects on person's character and emotions, both deep and on the surface. And lastly, he also uses different literary devices on his poem, and that is poetic discourse. Thank you.
The end. Hope you learned something.